So the conversation for this Workforce Wednesday is going to be around navigating generational differences in the workplace. Today we'll be diving into a topic that touches every employer, every team, and every industry across Minnesota. How we navigate general differences in the workplace. As we think about our current workforce landscape, one thing is increasingly clear. Our ability to thrive depends on how we leverage the strength of a multi-generational workforce. With 5 generations working side by side, I'll repeat that, with 5 generations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, working side by side, each bringing unique experiences, communication styles, and expectations. The opportunity isn't simply in managing these differences, it's in understanding them, learning from them, and using them to fuel collaboration and innovation. So this webinar is all about exploring practical strategies to bridge generational gaps, reduce friction, and create environments where every employee can contribute fully. So by building workplace that honors diverse perspectives, we're not just solving today's challenges, we're preparing our organization to be more adaptable, resilient, and future ready. So I didn't say this, but now let me formally introduce myself. My name is Adeshewa Adesiji. I am one of an amazing team of workforce strategy consultants that are located throughout the state of Minnesota. I am filling in for Jessica Miller, who is our Director of Workforce Strategy for the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And once again, we are so happy to have you with us here today to join in this very engaging and great conversation. Now, if you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. If you are a returning audience member, thank you for coming back. Please take a moment to introduce yourself, your role, where you work, as well as one low cost or simple practice that has strengthened collaboration across age groups in your workplace. So if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. I'll go first. So one simple practice that works well for us, our team, in the past is holding bi-monthly sessions where team members share best practices or an area expertise, almost like a mini workshop. It creates a low pressure space where everyone, regardless of generation, has a chance to teach something and learn something. So even within our team, we have different generations representing our workforce strategy consultant team. So our team works regionally, which means that each consultant will have a slightly different way they do their work based on the region and the employers they are serving in those regions. But the common core way that we support employers are identified here. We work with you to identify gaps in your current strategies, ensure that you're connected with your local, regional, and state workforce partners, and we assist you in building strategies that will help you attract and retain your workforce. So as you will learn today, our consultation process is rooted in, informed by data and is developed specifically with your company needs and goals in mind. We serve as your guide through the process and convene workforce partners for support, share training and grant opportunities, and continually check in to ensure progress is being made and assisted in making adjustments along the way. So when you work with us, you are automatically connected to a wide network of people and partners who work collaboratively and for the success of our state, our regions, our communities, and so that your businesses and your workforce can thrive. We do not do this work alone. It takes many people to bring success to these efforts. We are the conveners, and we pride ourselves, and our goal is to connect those resources and making it easier for you as the employer to reach your goals of building a strong workforce for your company. So here this is, the slide that you should be seeing next is our lineup for our 2026. All are ready for registration. You spoke, we listened. So we incorporated your feedback into the topics for this year, and we'll continue to weave your needs in our sessions for the year. If a hot topic comes up or something new is on your mind, we are always happy to add a session. So please keep speaking up. Let us know what you like more clarity on, and what information you're looking for or any topic you're curious to explore further. I do believe in our follow-up surveys. We do have a section where you're able to list any ideas or thoughts or topics that you'd like to see for a future Workforce Wednesday. I'd also like to take a moment to encourage you to fill out the evaluation at the end of our time here today. We'll get that link popped up in the chat for you, and I believe that we'll pop it up again towards the end of the session. This is your perfect opportunity to share your thoughts on these sessions. Let us know what you find valuable, and once again, if there's any topics that you would like to see us address in a future Workforce Wednesday, that is the time to let your voice be heard. As always, our webinars are recorded and available to view at any time via YouTube, as well as on our CareerForceMN.com website, where you can find recordings and resources from this session, as well as all of our previous sessions, I believe going back to our very first session a couple of years back. We'll be utilizing our chat feature today, as well as the Q&A feature located at the top menu bar throughout our time together. Please ask questions, answer questions, and interact with our guests. This is a very informal, interactive webinar. Also, feel free to interact with the consultant team, partners, and each other. We really want to build upon the community we've started here and welcome your engagement. So it's not just we talk and you listen. We want you to be engaged. If you want to reach out to any of the consultants or panelists, or you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A feature. So we have a very packed and exciting agenda today with speakers who have dedicated their careers to being change makers and cultural shakers. And I am very excited for you to meet them. I am particularly very excited about this topic, very curious to know what the conversation is going to be like. So without further ado, it is my absolute honor and privilege to introduce you to a coworker who I have a lot of respect for. And although she is the newest one on the team, she has surpassed us in so many things, including just how she facilitates this Workforce Wednesday, her webinars. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Becky Zubrick, our Southeast and South Central Workforce Strategy Consultant. Take it away, Becky.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Adeshewa, and thank you for popping in and filling for Jessica. I just wanted to say good morning, everyone. It is April Fool's Day. I'm Becky Zoback. I'm the Workforce Strategy Consultant for the South Central and Southeast region of the state. I'm always happy to bring panelists from my region in, so I can't wait for you to meet them. I'm really excited for today's webinar as we'll be focusing on a topic that many employers, HR teams, and supervisors are navigating in real time. And that's how to build strong working relationships across generations in the workplace. So this session is really, it's not about stereotypes or putting people in boxes. It's about understanding where friction can show up, why it happens, and what employers can do to create more clarity, consistency, and collaboration across their teams. So our goal today is really simple. It's to share practical ideas that you can use right away, things that work in the real workplaces and not just theory. So let's get started. We can go to the next slide and we'll show your roadmap for today. So first, we'll start on a quick look at the multi-generational workforce and why the topic matters for employers right now. And then we'll look at the 3 common friction zones that show up across teams, like communication and feedback, flexibility and fairness, and change and learning support. And then from there, we'll move into our panel discussion to hear real world insights and practical examples from the field. And after the panel, we'll shift into a simple action employers and leaders can take right away. So practical steps that you can take right after this panel. So we'll wrap up the main session with a few key takeaways to carry forward. And then at noon, stick around because that's the unplugged discussion. So that's going to be where we're a more informal place for questions and comments. So stick around for that. So as we get started, I want to ask my colleague to put a question in the chat for you. So what's one word that comes to mind when you think about generational differences at work? Go ahead and pop that in the chat so we can see what everybody thinks. All right, next slide. So before we talk strategies, I want to ground us in the reality that many workplaces today include employees from 4 or even 5 generations. This visual, drawn from the US Census Bureau, generational groupings gives us a snapshot of the generations that may be represented across today's workforce. I'm not going to read through each category line by line, but I do want to acknowledge that people may come to work with different experiences, expectations, and communication preferences shaped in part when they entered the workforce and what they've experienced over time. So before we go further, I do want to set an expectation for today's conversation that we're using generations as a broad context, not as labels or assumptions about any one person. So let's be respectful in our communication. And the goal today is really just not to manage people by label, but it's to think about how employers, HR teams, and supervisors can create that consistent and connection across their teams. So that's really the lens for the rest of the day. So we can go to the next slide and let's look at why this really matters in Minnesota. So I wanted to bring in that this is not just like a national conversation. Here in Minnesota, Deeds Labor Market Information Office notes that we are now have at least 5 generations in the workforce. So that's from teens entering work to employees age 76 and older. The data also shows the Generation X, which we have some in the room, currently makes up the largest labor force cohort in the state, with millennials close behind, while Gen Z is already a significant part of the workforce and continuing to grow. At the same time, those baby boomers are retiring in larger numbers, and we keep seeing that. I'm sure that'll be part of the conversation. So looking ahead, Minnesota's labor force is projected to keep growing, but more slowly through 2035. That means employers will likely continue operating in a tight labor market where retention, engagement, and clear expectations matter more than ever. So for employers, HR teams, and supervisors, this conversation is really about more than generational differences. It's about how we create workplaces where people can communicate clearly, adapt to change, and work well across different experiences and expectations. So this is what makes the topic so relevant right now. Next slide. So with that in mind, I just want to go over the 3 common friction zones quickly, and then we'll get going in the panel because that's I know everybody wants to hear from the panelists. So where does generational friction tend to show up in most workplaces? Well, it's really in communication and feedback, which can include things like preferred communication channels, how often feedback is given, and how direct it is, and what people interpret as responsive or maybe respectful. The second is flexibility and fairness. Employees have different expectations around schedules, boundaries, and what fair treatment actually looks like in practice. And then the third is change and learning support. So people vary in how they like to learn. Think about that for yourself. Like how quickly they like to adapt to change, how much context or support they need along the way. So again, these aren't problems tied to one generation or another. They're common workplace dynamics that can be more visible when teams include people with different experiences and expectations. So these are the 3 areas that we'll use and focus in on. And then let me switch. If you want to next slide, I will introduce my panelists. So we've talked a lot about the topic and why it matters in Minnesota and some of the common friction zones. So I'm really pleased to be joined today by 4 panelists who each bring their own perspective to this conversation. So thank you all for being here. First, Lynn Waterbury is a career navigator assistant at South Central College, where she helps connect students to career pathways and college opportunities through outreach and career navigation programming. And we can probably stop sharing the slides. We'll be good now. And then next, Brittany Voigt is the Director of Operations at Ron's Plumbing, HVAC, and Electric in Wells, where she oversees daily operations, sales, marketing, and supports the company's continued growth. We're also joined by Brittany Pren, ESL and Operational Training Manager at Cambria, where she leads workplace English, operations training, and leadership development efforts. And finally, Brooke is the Regional Sales Manager at Wenger Corporation, where she supports and leads sales team members across Texas and helps strengthen customer partnerships and project success. So what I appreciate most about this panel is it brings more than one lens to the conversation. We have employer, we have training, education, and workforce connected perspectives represented, which gives a broader view of what the organizations are seeing and what it seems to help. So as you listen, I'd encourage you to think about your own workplace. Where these friction points may show up for most of you, what sounds familiar, and what's one idea that you want to take back with your teams. So with that, let's jump into the conversation and get rolling here. So I know let's do a quick warm-up question. Well, maybe 2. So, and whoever wants to go first can go first, but let's do in 1 sentence. What does generational differences look like in your world? So whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first. I'm Bridget. You said Brittany, which is like the most common name that I get. That is not my own, and another Brittany here. But I'll go first here at Cambria. So we're manufacturing. We're in one of those categories where we do have 5 generations working here in all different cultural backgrounds, educational backgrounds. I'd say, it's obvious technological and digital literacy differences, and something that might be common sense for somebody on one hand, is not a straightforward process for another, and that can go both ways. There are a lot of gaps for all the different generations. That was probably more than 1 sentence, but that's what I see here.
Great.
I can go. I'm Brooke from Wenger Corporation. So a few of the things I would say is like the different communication styles, work expectations, and comfort with technology while we're all trying to collaborate to get to the same goal, but it's easy to interpret it different ways. So I saw that a lot in the chat of some of those things I just mentioned, but you're not alone. Everyone is experiencing those as well.
Same for us. It's communication technology. In the trades, we have people who are used to working out in the field that have to come in the office and work on a computer, and they've never done that before. So that's the biggest challenge that comes to mind.
In the education space, I'm at a community college, so we have everyone. I mean, I just got another certification. So you have, millennials, we have a couple of baby boomers that are still doing education. We have a gentleman who is 76 in our auto body program right now. So, and post-secondary student options. So we have, 15 and 16-year-old kids. So communication is huge. The 76-year-old isn't going to check his phone for text messages or emails every day, as far as that goes. But you know, the 15 and 16-year-old would just expect those messages. And nobody reads emails. Doesn't matter what age you are.
Speak for yourself, Lynn, right?
That's what I get told on a daily basis.
Yeah, very, very different across the board for sure. Next question, this is around Robin as well. What's one assumption people make about generations that creates that unnecessary friction?
I can start again with this because I see it all the time. You know, there's a lot of assumption that somebody who may be tech savvy is operationally competent. And so we may skip over some things with somebody who presents as technologically savvy because we're just assuming that they're understanding what we're doing. And so steps may get missed with that group.
I think that older generation can sometimes think that younger employees don't want to work or that they don't want to work as hard as they did when they were their age.
Yeah, along that line, I was going to say the idea that age automatically determines work ethic or attitude, like, you know, assuming that younger people are entitled or don't want to work, or older people are resistant to change when, you know, in reality, most people want to just do good work and be respected. It's hard. I know I see in the chat again, like people putting people into boxes just because of your age. And there's so many people you can probably think of that are outside of that box. So yeah, I agree.
One of the fun things, and I hear it from my own kids, is the respect your elders. But then, you know, the younger generation is, well, I will give respect when I get respect. So there's that cycle.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'd like to switch then and go into that zone 1 that we were identified earlier, that communications and the feedback. So Brittany, I'd like to start with you. So
Okay.
where do you see communication or feedback misunderstandings show up the most across your positions in the trades? And what did you change that helped in that area?
Right. So first off, I think there's a big gap in between who's in the office and who is out in the field. Typically, an older generation of especially males will be in the office working because they simply can't work outside anymore. That's too hard on their body. And so there's a lot of miscommunication between the younger guys in the field and the older guys in the office, thinking that maybe they don't know what they're doing because they're new to that role. That's hard. And then I think texting and calling is huge because younger generation, they like to text, older does not. They will call 25 times a day and someone that's younger will call me once a month. Just different styles of communication. I'm used to both. I'm a millennial, but the older generation doesn't typically like texting at our company anyway.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I have similar experiences with that too. Lynn, how about you? What's the most common maybe communication mismatch that you see with students and new hires that start a job? And you know, do you wish employers would make explicit in 1 week? What do you think around that?
Yeah, before I worked in this role, I actually worked in temporary staffing. So I will actually go into classrooms and talk to students about kind of the unwritten rules. Um, I think sometimes when you have a new hire, the expectations aren't always laid out because we just assume everybody knows to show up on time, to be ready for the day. To, you know, this is how long you get for lunch. These are the expectations. And I don't think we always give those as clearly as we should. And unfortunately, some of that is also hygiene. as odd as that sounds. And I think that if you're going to be in the office, the expectations might be a little different than being out in the field. How you present yourself is going to be a little bit different. How you talk to customers should absolutely 100% be the same. But you know, laying those very basic expectations out, I think would help on both sides of the coin.
Okay. Yeah. And Bridget, from the ESL and operational training perspective, what communication norm or support maybe has made the biggest difference in helping employees understand expectations and maybe reduce misunderstandings?
Yeah, and I'd say on our end, you know, I can think of two things that we do. One is we do a lot of video and visual implementations with our training, all through our orientation, with our safety, anything that's required by our employees. We have a lot of visuals and we do videos, which everybody appreciates, but it really reaches across generations. The other thing I think it's so simple that we kind of overlook it is a genuine smile and just asking questions to people and building a relationship with them, and you really get to know how they work, how they're going to acquire information, and so it's easy to accommodate in that sense. And we're not a tiny company, but we're small enough where we all know each other. It's a family-owned company. So I guess it's a little bit of a luxury that we can do that. We can spend that personal time with people, because we talk about generational differences, but everybody from every generation there's a multitude of learning styles and backgrounds. And so it's really, despite generations, you're gonna do that here anyways, to get to know what do you need to be the best that you can be here, and be heard. So we build relationships, and that goes a long way. People become comfortable telling you what they need. Yeah, and it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, I bet. And it is just learning and spending time with one another too, is how you learn what everybody's preferences are. And I think in today's world, especially, so everything's a lot of virtual, I think that sometimes can do a disservice, but yeah. All right, Brooke, in a customer facing relationship driven role, where do generational differences maybe show up in communication internally with customers, or maybe ways that you help navigate them?
Yeah, my internet went out, so I'm hoping that you can hear me again.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. So yeah, my team is in a sales role. So I think one of the ways that shows up internally is communication styles, like we've already talked about, and also externally with customers is communication styles. So like, you know, your younger generations are wanting the quick text message or email, like they don't want to talk on the phone. And then maybe your older generations want a long email and maybe a more formal tone. So one of the best things I learned from another coworker was like mirroring someone where they're at, you know, so like say you're talking to someone that's you know, just loud and is like really having fun and excited, like matching that tone versus like someone that's maybe a little bit more reserved, like you don't want to overwhelm. So meeting people where they're at. So I think that honestly can work internal as customers internally and externally. So that's kind of where I see it. And we try to make sure that, you know, if someone always wants an email, we're emailing them. If someone prefers to talk on the phone, we're calling them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I would maybe just add a follow-up question to that, and anybody could answer this, is if you could standardize maybe just one communication expectation on all your teams or any team, what would it be? Like one communication expectation.
I think over communicating, honestly, for me, like I don't want to have to like be in the dark, or, you know, just being able to like respond to customers and acknowledge the fact that you're working on something. Maybe you're not working on it at this moment, but hey, I'll get back to you, and setting an expectation of when you'll get back to someone. I think everyone appreciates that, versus just saying, like in 5 days, you're like, oh, hey, sorry, I was working on this, but like, if you can just say, I'm going to get back to you by this time, I really think people are going to be happy about that. I would be happy if someone did that to me too.
We talk a lot
And I
about
think
transparency. Oh, sorry.
you go ahead, Brittany. You go ahead.
Just being transparent within the office and also with customers. That's huge for us.
For us here, we talk a lot about sort of like validation or acknowledgement. Brooke was kind of talking about that. Just validation that somebody understood you. Like we put the onus, the accountabilities on the messenger that, what we're telling you, you heard. It's up to me to make sure that you understood that and got the message how I intended it to be received. So we really push that here.
Great. Well, that's zone 1. So we can move and scoot along right to zone 2, which is the flexibility and fairness piece. So Brittany, will start with you maybe on how do you offer flexibility with accountability? So without it feeling like favoritism, I know sometimes that can be an issue. So what's flexible versus non-negotiable in your workplace?
Right. Non-negotiable would be the outcome of your work, but I think the way that you get there, depending on what you're doing, whether you are out in the field or in the office, everyone's going to work a certain way. And we have to know that that's the case because of generational or maybe where you're at with technology. And understanding that goes a long way, because as long as everybody knows, here's what we expect at the end of the day, how you get there, I don't care. But as long as you get there, I think that's good for them and they understand.
Okay, great.
I think our approach is similar. Sorry, Becky, were you going to add to that?
No, sorry.
I think our approach is similar. It's more of like a competency based. So it's not a checklist of how many times you've completed something. It's here's the measurable outcome. And when you get there, then we're moving on to the next step. And it's just, it ensures more equity. Somebody needs something more, we're going to give it to them. My background is education, and that's just how we treat it, right? Fairness is everybody getting what they need, especially when it comes to learning, and especially when that learning impacts our outcome as a company. So we see the value of putting that investment up front. Like if you need more time learning this, then we're going to give you more time learning this, and we're going to give you more tools to learn it. And so we've seen how that flexibility pays off as well. And then people feel valued.
Great. I love that. Good insights. Good insights. So Lynn, maybe let's go back to you. So what expectations do new hires bring around scheduling, time off, boundaries, and what helps them understand employer expectations early?
Kind of around what we had talked about already, is that as long as you get your job done, kind of how you get it done and when you get it done is ultimately up to you. I had a conversation yesterday with a Gen Zer who is salaried, and she was talking about how it doesn't matter if it's 8 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock in the morning, as long as the job is getting done. She's putting in her 40 hours that week. It doesn't matter how or when she works. Where, the expectation might be, I expect you to get those 40 hours in Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. I think that the generational difference is different. I know some people would prefer to work noon to 8 rather than an 8 to 5, and that might be their work-life balance. I've heard new hires use circadian rhythm. Their circadian rhythm isn't, they're just not a morning person, so they would rather work that later shift from a 3 to 11 or whatever that looks like. And it's weird in an education space where that might be that, but at the same time, we also have night classes. We also have weird hours. So that might actually work here if you're more behind the scenes. I think it differs between departments, between majors at the college. It's pretty fluid, and it just kind of depends on what the expectations are. As an older generation, you might have to give a little bit in order to get the job done. Where I might like somebody in the office Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, maybe their productivity is better later in the afternoon. So, figuring out what that looks like. So having those open, honest conversations. What does that look like for you? These are my expectations. How do you see yourself getting, those expectations done?
I think it's important, Lynn, to call out like those expectations need to be clear, right, on both ends before we can decide what path we're taking. As long as we're
100%.
going to the same landmark, we can get there. But yeah, that's important.
Yeah, interesting with the time off and the boundaries. I think like there are so many people that look for that when they're looking for maybe new roles. How do companies handle that? And so I'd be curious to see if any of you other have any thoughts on that too, like expectations around the new hires and maybe when they are most productive, because that's interesting.
Well, and COVID kind of introduced us to working remotely. So that whole thing has changed. You have people that only want to work remotely, and you have people that only want to be in the office. So it just depends on the person and what, ultimately exactly what Bridget said. You have to make your expectations clear to the letter. And what does that look like? What do you need?
Yeah. All right, let's move on. The next question, Bridget, is what has helped you keep expectations around training, maybe accountability and support consistently and transparent across employees with different experience levels or learning needs?
Yeah, and that's good. I kind of spoke to, how we roll our training out and based on competencies, getting there. So it gives people like an opportunity to, for lack of a better phrase, test out of certain competencies if they have a lot of experience coming into it. But we've had people coming in with experience saying, oh, I already know how to do all of that. And then we show them, our training and, oh, actually, I am picking up a couple of things here. I'm learning a couple of new things. So it's also understanding like the depth of their experience. Somebody might come in with a lot of confidence because I did that job for a year at one place, so I know how to do it. And really it kind of goes back to when we see somebody who appears to be technologically savvy, that doesn't necessarily translate to operational competency. And so, it comes back to expectations, building those relationships, having the conversations to see, like, do they actually understand? And then we have the same metrics for everybody. So everybody has to meet the same competencies to do the same job. And however they want to prove that, we'll accept that, but they have to go through the same phase of competencies in order to get there. So learning styles are aplenty around here. So nobody really feels like there's, we're putting a highlight on their different learning style because there are just so many, as employees we have that many learning styles. So
makes it challenging.
It makes it challenging, but it also makes it, everybody comfortable, right? Like, and I aim for that in our training areas, in our classrooms, is that this is a safe place. And, we value mistake making. We value the opportunity that comes from making mistakes. We want to get rid of the fear that comes around, like, I can't talk, I can't bring things up, I can't ask questions because I don't want to look stupid. We work really intentionally to remove that obstacle for people, because that's such a huge obstacle for learning new processes, for learning new technology, for learning new people, new environments. So really setting the stage for people to feel like we are approachable and this is a safe place to learn.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Brooke, the last question in this zone will go to you. So from a sales leadership perspective, how do you balance flexibility, autonomy, and accountability while keeping expectations clear and consistent across those team members?
Yeah, I think everyone kind of hit on a few things already about like keeping your expectations like very clear. Like here's where we have to get to, but like our CEO said one time, like how you climb the mountain can be different. You know, it's like here's your main goal and where we got to get to, but you know, you can do that in a different way. And so one of the things that we do a lot of is working with architectural drawings, and sometimes we don't have a blueprint or something like that. And so one way that we go into a school and measure for our products is we have a tool on our iPads, and then we also have people that use graph paper. And so there's two different ways to get there, but they're getting the same result. So I have people that are like, I just can't. It's easier for me to do this on a graph paper, and I'm going to do it that way. And I'm like, that's okay. As long as you're getting to the same result, I think that that's what matters. So in just being open to what they meeting them where they're at, honestly, like that's kind of one of those things that we talked about, customers and stuff like that, but being open to you know, where people are at and just being really transparent. I think one of the things we talked about was you know, different work-life balance and working hours and things like that. We're all adults. If we know that this is our goal, like I should be able to trust that, you know, you're making the right decisions. And I think that if I give people grace because they're human beings and have a life, they're going to give me hard work in return. And so that's something that I feel very strongly about, is like giving my people work-life balance and letting them, you know, if they have to do something during the day, they have to do that. And I know in return, they're going to do good work for me. And I just think that's super important that, on my team specifically, I know that they really appreciate that. And I appreciate that in return from my manager too. So.
Awesome. Love that. That's what great leadership is, for sure. All right. Awesome. Well, we are going to keep plugging away because it's already 11:40, which crazy. Time flies when you're having fun. So that final zone, then when we're talking about that change learning supports, which includes that training, the ramp up, the psychological safety for employees. Brittany, when you roll out change then through new processes, tool trainings, what helps people ramp up successfully across those different experience levels?
Well, I just got nervous thinking about sending out a training invite to people because we have to do it so often and usually I get some grumbling. But I think explaining the why behind what you're doing is probably the best thing that you can do before a training. And then to also not assume, like Bridget had said earlier, that maybe someone seems tech savvy, so we don't need to go over this again. They got it. No, I think consistency and revisiting some of our trainings over and over again helps a lot with everyone. Luckily for us in our industry, we're required to do, you know, countless trainings a year. And so people don't get too mad at me every time my son went out. But yeah, just the why. Here's why we have to do this. We're not just pulling this out of thin air today to work on. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I heard a statistic that it's like you have to hear something 7 times to like really get it ingrained in your brain. And so like it's good to retrain on things and make sure that everyone feels good about like what they're doing.
For sure. All right, Lynn, the next question for you. In the first 30 to 60 days, what helps new hires feel confident, supported, and ready to succeed, do you think?
Definitely check-ins. Again, you know, during those first couple of days when you're walking through everything and showing everybody where the bathrooms are and all of, you know, the logistical things after the expectations have been set. This is, you know, this is what this is going to look like. Just checking in and finding out more about their learning style and finding out how that's going to happen. Maybe a buddy system would be better for one employee where it might be overbearing. Another employee might find it just too much. I'm a procrastinator, so if I have a checklist, I'm going to wait until the last possible minute to get everything done, and that's just how I roll. But if I have someone checking in on me, hey, have you done this, 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 and this? Yes, I'm definitely going to get all three of those things done, and maybe one, that was on the list for tomorrow, or whatever that looks like. An open door policy for me is always huge. And I am so fortunate to work in such a network of people who just really take care of each other, and I think that is a huge culture. That's just office culture, or it's employee culture. It's where you just feel responsible for the person next to you, whether you're on the manufacturing floor or you're in an office in a storage closet. Just having somebody poke in and check in on you and just making sure that you're okay. Have you had lunch today? Just little things. Human interaction goes a long way. Finding out about people, asking those questions. How do you learn? Do you have what you need? What can we do for you? Those questions go a long way.
Yeah, across all generations, right?
Yes, yes.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Bridget, we'll go back to you. So what's one low-cost training support that you've used to improve confidence, understanding, and adoption across employees with different experience levels or language needs?
Yeah, I mentioned before we use a lot of visuals in our training and in our language classes as well. And we produce many of them in-house. Like my team will make, a video SOP, like, okay, so we need a standard operating procedure to show how to do this, or a work, a job function. It's like, we just need this one little piece that we're not really getting it through language. So we need just a video, what do we do? When we want to learn something, we go to YouTube. So we try to have our own little library of instructional aids for people, and we make them here. We don't outsource any of that. I have, a couple people on my team, and it's pretty low, low budget. We're using an iPhone and working with the subject matter experts and saying, okay, do this for us, perform this for us on camera, making sure that it aligns with the SOP. We're doing it right. We're showing them right. We're teaching it right. And having all of those modes available, whether it, be audio, we're really moving into AI space as well, using some podcast type learnings for people who learn by listening. Videos, we do transcripts, and of course we have to translate everything that we do to make it accessible for the folks that need to understand it. And that's all relatively low cost. We do it in-house, and it's pretty quick turnaround. We can respond quickly to operational needs that way. So it's been a valuable tool that we've implemented here.
I love that. Great information there. Awesome. All right, last question, Brooke. When expectations, processes, or customer needs change, what helps people stay adaptable and engaged without feeling overwhelmed or resistant?
Yeah, I mean, change is definitely hard. But I think, like Brittany said, is like explaining the why. That's going to help people stay engaged, to help them understand why it's going to help the customer improve the results or make the job easier. And then just giving them a chance to weigh in too. It's not just a me decision, but like I want their input as well. Like, how can we make it better? Like, this is where I started. How can we get it to the next level and make it really good, and then just keeping expectations simple, instead of changing a bunch of things at once, right? Like, let's start on one thing, and then be good at that, and then get to the next level, and then giving people a small win, like, here's how it worked, just so that they can see it in action. And then I would say just being consistent with that, like that I'm being supportive and guiding them, rather than just saying, here, go do this. There's always going to be change, but when it feels like you're being supportive and including them in the decisions, I feel like people are better at, adapting to that. We have a continuous improvement team here. So we're always working on that stuff. And at first it was like the leaders were involved in that, and now getting that down to our teams to help them be involved with that. Because if it's only at your leader level, it's like, it feels like they don't get any insight into it. And so getting everyone involved in some of that stuff, to a point, of course, is good.
Awesome. All right. Does anybody have any additional comments or anything they want to add before we go back to the slides and do a quick review? Otherwise, we'll save it for the unplugged, right?
Sounds
All
good.
right, awesome. So thank you all for the panelists. Let's transition back to the slides so that we can kind of wrap up and then go through our unplugged piece. And then we'll be able to really dive into, I seen the chat was just flying. I can't keep up. I'm sure there's lots of information in there and the Q&A. So, perfect. 3 things you can do this month. So let's look at that. So I want to bring us back to those practical actions for employers, HR teams, and supervisors can take right away. So you heard a lot of great things today, but the goal here is not to overhaul everything at once. It's to start with simple practices that can reduce friction and improve that communication across teams. So the first is to set clear team norms, right? So it's making those expectations more visible, things like communication channels, response times, feedback methods, meeting practices, and flexibility expectations. A lot of that friction can really be reduced by simply making those norms explicit instead of assumed, and you heard that today. So the second is to standardize that feedback and recognition. So people may have different perspectives, but consistency does matter. So setting a regular rhythm for one-on-one check-ins, like you heard, clarifying expectations and building recognition can go a long way in helping employees feel supported and set up for success. And the third is to build two-way learning. So that might look like reverse mentoring, cross-training, or buddy systems that help people learn from one another. It's really a practical way to support ramp up, strengthen collaboration, and make better use of the different strengths of the people across your teams. So none of those steps have to be complicated. It can be low budget, and together they can make meaningful difference in how people experience the workplace. Next slide. So as we close the session, the main session, you're staying on. I know you are. I want to leave us with a few key messages from today. So first, generational friction is usually less about those attitudes and more about that mismatched expectations. When that communication, feedback, flexibility, and learning supports are not clearly defined, people can interpret the same situation very differently. Second, clear teams norms do matter. The more organizations can create clarity around how work does get done, how feedback is given, and what employees can expect, the less room there is for that misunderstanding. Third, fairness does not always mean treating everyone identically. In the workplace, fairness often comes from consistency, transparency, and making expectations clear. Fourth, learning, support, and psychological safety do matter, especially in times of change. So employees are more likely to adapt, continue, and grow when they feel supported and able to ask questions without judgment, which you've heard today. And finally, when leaders build clarity, connection, and capability across teams, generation differences can become a strength rather than a source of friction. So thank you all for being here and part of the conversation. At this point, I will hand it over to Della, who will lead our Unplugged session discussion. And it looks like we're a few minutes ahead of schedule, but I'm sure that's all good. We'll have plenty to talk about. So the next portion is really just designed to be an informal space for that. Questions, the comments, and communication. So Della, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Becky. Really appreciate it. Great conversation by everybody. Great feedback and input in the chat. Can't wait to get to all those questions. And just hang on just for a few seconds as we do a quick transition to our Unplugged. I am Della Ludwig. I am Central Minnesota and Southwest Minnesota's workforce strategy consultant, covering 22 counties in the region. As we transition to the Unplugged session, which goes till 12:30, where you can unmute yourselves and turn on your cameras and ask your questions directly to our panelists, I'd like to just give you a little reminder to join us next month on May 6th for our Workforce Wednesdays discussion on neurodiverse workforce, accommodations, job slicing, and superpowers. So this May, Workforce Wednesday will invite you to a powerful conversation about how embracing neurodiversity can transform the way we work, hire, and lead. Our panel of employers, advocates, and workforce experts will explore how organizations can move beyond awareness and into action, building environments where neurodiverse talent doesn't just fit in, but truly thrives. Join our panel experts as they unpack real-world accommodations and learn how flexible schedules, sensory-friendly spaces, and clear communication systems can create workplace that work for everyone. And job slicing in action can assist in discovering how we rethink job roles, matching strengths to those tasks, and helps unlock productivity and engagement across the teams. Then those superpowers at work, hearing success stories that highlight the creativity, focus, and innovation that neurodiverse employees bring to the table, and how utilizing those strengths of neurodiversity will give you the competitive advantage within your workplace. Neurodiversity is more than inclusion, it's a competitive advantage. By valuing these different ways of thinking and problem solving, employers can gain new insights, foster creativity, and strengthen workplace belonging. Join us in this inspiring Workplace Wednesday to learn how simple, intentional changes can make your organization a place where everyone's strengths shine. I'd like to thank Becky and her panelists for their conversation on navigating generational differences in the workplace. It was very in-depth conversation. As we now switch to our Unplugged session, please take a minute to complete the survey and how we can continue to grow our Workforce Wednesday events for you, and let us know what you want as those highlighted topics and how we can strengthen this event on a monthly basis. Keep in mind the next 30 minutes will be for you specifically. So unmute yourselves and turn on those cameras. And we will go ahead and have that open conversation specifically with those panelists. And here we go. Everybody's ready? All right. We had a few questions out there, and I find it really interesting when we're talking about all of this. We talk about not only the generations, but then you start talking personalities, right? Because personalities play into this as well. And, you know, there's 5 generations, there's 5 personalities, well, up to 16 personalities, depending on who or what specific area you look at. But Some of the questions that we asked or that were asked in there, one of them was from Sarah, and this one goes to Lynn. And Lynn, you made a great comment. That was you need to give respect to get that respect. How do you respond to that or navigate through some of that with your employees, especially when you're talking to those different generations?
There's a couple different, like almost funnel questions to figure out why that is an issue. Are the personalities conflicted? Do you not like each other? Because you can respect somebody without liking who they are. I tell my kids all the time, I thoroughly enjoy music by a certain artist, but I don't agree with what they have going on. Same thing in the workplace, right? So I don't have to like Stanley, but at the same time, I respect what he does because I can't do my job without him. So having that also differentiating the respect from judgment is another thing. Ask questions. Why do you feel that way? What made you feel that way? Kind of unpack, why is respect the issue? Why are we stuck right here? Because I think there's a lot of things that go into that conversation that need to be narrowed down before it's just a matter of respect.
I love
in my
that. I love
opinion.
that respect versus judgment. I think that's a great statement. And I know earlier, Bridget had said something about making people feel valued. I think that's a great statement. No matter who you are, you always want to make people feel like they're valued. And that goes across no matter who you're talking to. And I think that's just something everybody needs to keep in mind. Mickey also asked a question, and I don't know who specifically this was to, but he had said, or she had said, I struggle with communicating with my millennial coworkers when it comes to communication and are following through with a request. What are others seeing when it comes to courtesy, acknowledgement, or of those emails? And it's funny because I'm looking at my other screen. I myself am a Generation Xer, and then I raised a millennial and also have a Generation Z. So when you start looking at all of this, I had to pull them all up because I'm like, okay, who am I all dealing with? And even my siblings are baby boomers. And it's like, okay, just how do you, and it kind of is funny how you work with or deal with people differently, but it's also personalities too, right? So, and how do you acknowledge them? And how do they acknowledge you? Because we have this conversation all the time of um, at least acknowledge that I text you or emailed you, so I know you received it. How do you deal with that in the workplace?
I can tell you, where I can, where I'm at, and I think I'm in a culture where it's very much, we value directness, and the expectation is that if there's an issue, if you have an issue, you're going to go directly to the person and say like, hey, we need to talk about this. And if that doesn't happen, sometimes people make it happen for you because it doesn't need to be scary, right? The more we ignore things, the more we avoid things, the bigger it becomes. And I talk to my sister a lot. She's she's in HR. She's been, in a lot of different companies, a lot of different environments. And, she'll tell me, you really have to train people how to communicate with you. And I said it before, like, it's on me. If I need somebody to talk to me a certain way or address me a certain way, or I have a problem with the way that you are speaking to me, it's on me to say, hey, I don't like that. You can't read my mind. Nobody can read my mind, right? So I need to give them an indication that that's not working for me. And then likewise, if I'm a messenger, I can do my part by saying, hey, I'm going to clarify that that message was received the way that I intended it to be received. And it all comes back to relationships. We have a lot of relationship-based courses in our leadership development program because everything stems from relationships, and you can solve almost any problem through relationships. You know, coming into workforce, it's all about who you know, not what you know. And there's some truth to
Mhm.
that. I think directness,
Right.
I guess, is my short answer.
Right. Communication, just in general. I think it goes both
Mhm.
ways, asking and receiving. So, just, even that head nod, like, yes, I hear you. I
Right.
understand. So, great. Michelle had a question out there too. She pulled up some of the information on all the different generations, and she had said, I'm very surprised that Generation X has the highest workforce given we're the smallest population cohort. Curious why millennials don't surpass us in this category. That's a great conversation, great input. Definitely have to get our labor market analysts probably involved in that. And we do have that team with Indeed that can definitely dig into that more. I don't have that up, I don't think, or those stats up. But I don't know if any of you want to talk or discuss about your workforce specifically and who you have the most at your workforce within those generations and how that plays into your workforce.
We actually just did this after we read a book about generational diversity. It's called A New Kind of Diversity by Tim Elmore. If anyone's interested, really, really good. Gives some good insight. That's kind of how I got involved in the conversation here, actually. But I don't think I have the stats anymore. I'd have to look for them. But our leader for our book club wrote out like what the statistics are as far as the generations we have here, and then what the statistic was for men and women too. It was quite surprising. Our biggest two generations are, I can't even remember what they are, the above millennials, those two generations, and then just how big the millennial and the next generation is getting in our workforce, and like just seeing people leave and things like that. So I thought that was really interesting to like see it across our company specifically, and I would be curious how it is for other companies, or like is it just in this town, or is it across the board like that, or the industry? Like I just thought that that was really interesting. I wish I had the actual
Very.
statistics because it would be more meaningful, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's great. So, and I'm trying to put it out here too, all the different generations and stuff. And I did put the book out there too, so people can see that information. So, and I just think it's fun too that Generation Z, then they have Generation Alpha and now Beta, that they have that all the way through 2039, that they've already labeled those kids what they plan on them being. So, find that super interesting that we already have them named through 2039. So trying to post that. So kind of fun. Great. Excellent. So let's go back to some of the other questions that we had out there and see if we can kind of talk a little bit more about those specific questions and discuss a little bit more about that information and see if we can talk in more detail. And what kind of questions do you guys have for each other? And what are some of the things that you're kind of thinking right now from this conversation and that you want to make sure that you discuss throughout this whole discussion too?
Well, I just want to
Anything
say,
that's
Brooke, if you get a lot of Gen Zers, send them my way then. That's what we need
I got you then.
big time.
that's
One of the
wonderful.
things that I think that we've done really well here, and it's kind of just been after we've decided to return to the office, is so we've just grown so much since we went home for COVID, which is awesome. But we have had like so many new people start. And so one of the things that our leadership is taking on is like a silo busting event. So first it started with leaders. So there's like almost 100 leaders, and we've done this 2 times now, and you pick another leader to talk with. So you pick like 4 leaders during this time. And then you just, say what brought you to the company, how long have you been here, what do you do? And then just getting to know people on a personal level. I know it's really vulnerable for some people and uncomfortable, but like allows you to get to know someone and maybe understand why they work the way that they work. And then we just started this with everyone else. So it's open for all employees. We just actually had something yesterday that we were doing. So more of a topic like that is not so much work related, like not pressuring them to be like, what do you do here that makes a difference? But like just getting to know each other and sitting down, and that's going across all generations, all teams, because people are just walking through the halls and don't know each other, and like getting a more formal setting for them to like have those conversations. And I saw a question. Yes, we do a book club through work, and it's open to anyone that's interested in leadership or just anything in general. We have really good discussions, and it's a great way to meet people. And I think the more that we have conversation and get to know each other, just makes us able to collaborate better.
I love it. I've also seen that some businesses are using like these special apps for businesses, and it's called Beekeeper app is one that I've heard. I don't know if you guys use this within your businesses, but it's a huge communication app, and it's everything and anything that can be put out there, your newsletters, any type of your policies, procedures, and people are having very good success with it. And it's a wonderful way for communication. Everything and anything is dropped into this app, and businesses are loving this way of communicating with their people. And they can use it for texting, building groups within their teams, those kind of things, as well as putting all communications for the businesses and schools, those kind of things. So definitely that there's a lot of conversations about these generations and how we can communicate better, and people want to know how to do that. So that is the one I've heard of. I'm sure there's plenty of others, but I know that it's been very successful. So Brittany, so let's kind of pick on you for a little bit. What's one issue in day-to-day operations that leaders often underestimate when managing across age groups? So when you're doing that day to day, what is one thing that those leaders often underestimate?
Well, I think in leadership, you assume that if people have an issue or if something's not working, that they're going to tell you. And I don't know if this is the same everywhere, you guys can tell me, but where I'm at, the younger generation will speak up, and they're kind of used to being able to express themselves about how they feel about something, whether it's a change or something new that they're not familiar with. They'll say, hey, wait a second, and ask questions. Whereas the older generation has a hard time with that. And so you kind of put people out there not realizing that they didn't know what you were just teaching or trying to get across, because they're not going to express it. So that's really hard. And I don't know how you do that, how you let people know that it's okay to speak up, or we understand. So
Great. And Lynn, what's one thing employers are often surprised to learn about students or those early career workers? What's something that they think that they know that are surprised about?
Being on time.
That they are on time or not on time?
It depends. It's so wild. I will go into different classrooms and different programs, and one of my favorites was auto body. And I think it's different. I saw one of the questions in the chat was, each industry is very different. Being late in healthcare is very different than being late in my role, because I don't, unless I have a set meeting at 8 o'clock, if I show up at 8:02 or 8:05, and sometimes it's 8:30, depending on how long it takes to get my dog to daycare that day, that's on me. But if you are in a clinic setting, or where you have appointments right away, you have people at the door waiting for you to open the doors, that looks very different. And sometimes that explaining why, it seems so commonplace. I shouldn't have to explain to someone how important being to work on time is in a clinic. I shouldn't have to. But sometimes having that conversation is yes. If you work in auto technology, if you have someone, your hours are from 8 to 5, you're going to have someone probably dropping off their car at 8 o'clock, and they want to talk to somebody. It's not just going to be where they're going to be okay dropping their key in a box and then leaving. They might need a ride, so that means someone else has to be there on time at 8 o'clock to get them to work. Explaining that the team aspect is integral to the success of the business, the success of your job, how you feel about yourself, how the customer is going to feel about you. It's so wild how we just take these things for granted. I've been working since I was 15. So I've seen all of this stuff in the last 35 years and how it evolves and how it does that. But I also remember very vividly when I was starting out, I couldn't figure out why everybody cared so much if I was there at 4:02 or if I was there at 4 o'clock. There are people that have appointments at 4:30 and need to be out of the office at 4 o'clock. So me being there at 4:02 is really upsetting to them. Just kind of explaining the bigger picture and how it all fits together.
Yes. And do you think children having jobs earlier in life assist them with some of these key responsibilities? Or
For sure. I made my kids either work in retail or food service when they were in high school, and they hated me for it. But now that they've all graduated college, they have thanked me for it. So they're like, "You are the worst."
my
Yeah.
son works at Century College in a very similar role as you, Lynn. And he still tells me to this day that he has nightmares of when he worked at a fast food place here in town because he's like, I still have nightmares. But I do
The server
have
dreams
that
never
same
go
rule
away.
in my house. So yes,
Yep.
that they had to work. So I think it's funny, but I grew up on a farm, so we did have to work. So, but I find that interesting too, that, some parents feel that sports and which I did too, but where is that common demeanor of when they have their first job? So, so what helps you, or helps those new hires feel confident enough to ask questions early on? Bridget, what do you think is that first time, or when do you think that they feel confident or comfortable enough at the workplace?
Well, I think it depends on who they meet right off the bat, because again, and I sound like a broken record, but it comes down to starting off at the relationships and, greeting somebody with a smile versus, like a robotic, this way, follow me. You're setting the tone for what we tolerate here, what we expect here as far as communication and respect and openness and directness and no fear. Like let's ask the questions that need to be asked. It comes up in every leadership meeting that I'm in. I sit in on a lot of operations leadership meetings, and they will get called out. All of these operations guys, like, you guys, if you have questions, now is the time to ask these questions. Like it's very much there's no dumb question, which is a very comforting thing to feel, when you're in a fast-paced environment, where we're moving, people are rolling up their sleeves, getting stuff done really fast. And there are a lot of serious looking people walking around, but you can stop any single one of them and ask any question that you want, and they will welcome that. And so we have to set that tone when people are coming, as soon as they walk in the door, even before that, when they're interviewing, so we talk to our hiring managers about how, how to set that tone during the interview process so people can know what to expect. But we certainly emphasize that in our new hire orientation as well. So at least they know who they can go to with questions if they don't feel like they can go to anybody.
I had a job, professional job, probably, well, I'm not going to say how many years ago, but professional job. And I wasn't shown where the bathroom or lunchroom was. And like the first day, I didn't go to the bathroom because I had no clue where it was because it was an old building. And I'm like, held it the whole day. I'm like, oh
Do
my
you feel
God,
like you're
I thought I was
expected
going to
to know
explode.
that already? And like,
Yeah.
what did I miss? Am I supposed to know this?
Yeah.
I can't ask where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Somebody
I felt
told me and I
dumb.
didn't
And they just
hear.
had me going from
Yep.
one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next. And I'm like, I'm going to explode.
Yeah, we have a little committee right now. We're working on putting together a new course for our LDP, and it's about creative problem solving. And one of the things, and he's the director of engineering here, he said, when I get my team together and we're trying to problem solve, and I need them, because he has a young team, right? And they're,
Yep.
everybody's like, I don't want to be the first one to say something dumb. And he's like, I am the one that says something dumb, and I do it intentionally. And I throw all of these silly ideas out there and say, you guys just start, just
Right.
let it go, like let it flow. So they're setting the example for their teams here, which is refreshing also. But it does take a bit. You have to have the relationships, and it's a vulnerable place to be, especially at work. So
Right.
I'll say it again and again, the relationships really matter, and it can
Absolutely.
lead to, it can yield some really positive results. So
Approachability is what I wrote down. Approachability.
huge. Mhm.
Yes, very huge. So Brooke, what helps build that trust and credibility across those generations? What's some of the things you learned in that book and in your millennial state, right? Am I in the right generation?
Yeah, that's me.
Yes. What are some of those things that assist you working with others as well as they working with you, and some of the things that you learned in your read?
Yeah, I think doing what you say you're gonna do, following up and things like that. I've read so many times on LinkedIn recently about a person who lost their biggest sale because they didn't follow up. And that's one of the things that we try really hard. We have a CRM, right? And there are tasks for a reason. Use them. Like someone could be beating you out just because they reached out and they were following up. And in a selling role, it's focusing on helping, not selling, right? Like how are we going to solve your problem together, not being pushy and that type of thing. So I think, and then matching their communication style. I know I talked about that a lot, but meeting them where they're at. At the end of the day, trust grows fastest when people feel understood and respected and supported. So I think that can translate throughout any generation.
Excellent. Excellent. And I wrote down some of the words earlier on, work ethic, lack of understanding, learning styles, some of those stereotypes and technology and where people, and it sounded like both directions, right? Like not just one direction or the other in the communication, um, you know, and what's one of the things that employers often overlook when trying to improve those communications across those teams? What could we all do better? And Adajeva says this all the time at work is, we have two ears for a reason, and one mouth is, we need to do a better job of listening and understanding before we just speak. And sometimes I think we all do and try so hard to, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? And how are we going to respond? That we don't spend the time to actually listen and make sure that a person feels heard, And I think that's for all generations, right? Like we could all do a better job with that. And how do you learn that? And that's the one of the things that we're not taught, right? And as a human, we all could do better as learning that a little better as a technique. So
One thing that I
um,
use with my team, I read this in a book one time. It's help, hurt, or hug. I use the hug part more in my personal life. But like, because I have someone who just wanted to tell me that what the issue was, and I'm very much a fixer, and I'm like, here's how I'm going to help you and fix that. And she's like, no, 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 I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to listen. I'm like, okay. So now I try to approach the conversation with a team member like, do you need me to help you, or do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to do both? Because that helps me set myself up for success and not put them in a weird spot if I'm trying to go fix their problem when in reality they just wanted to, tell me about it. So that's
I,
been really helpful for me.
I love that. I really do. I think that's a great way to address that too, because I think sometimes that's human nature too, right? We just want to fix it. And it's just quicker for us and easier for us. Let's just fix it and move on. So that's a great
It's
point. I like that.
interesting that you say that, Brooke. As I was just talking to a friend earlier this week, who was a pastor for many, many years. And that is his approach to communicating with anybody is like, let me know the expectations up front. Are you wanting my input, my help, or do you just want me to listen? Like, is this an active or a passive situation for me? And I
Right.
think that's such a fair and validating question up front to know that you are engaged and you want to be best prepared, for what they need. I think that's really well done.
Yeah, I love it. And Adejewa put it out there. You have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth for a reason. So yes, I love it. So as a
Oh,
closing
oh,
here,
sorry.
what's one thing you want employers and the organizations here today, what would you want them to remember from today about this conversation? And we'll go around and do the round robin. Hopefully we'll see some soon outside. But what is that one thing you want those employers to remember from today about this conversation? Lynn, I'm going to start with you.
Oh goodness. Be the kind of employee that you want. I mean, if what you need from somebody is approachability, or you want to, you see somebody else being really helpful and how that, impacted their day or whatever that looks like, be that person. I'm a ridiculously outgoing, optimistic person. So when I'm in the hallway and I see a student or an adult who looks really lost, I'll, hey, do you need anything? Can I help you find something? Just go out of your way to make other people feel okay. If I knew that there's a new person in the office somewhere, sit by them at lunch, ask them how the first couple weeks are going, ask them if they need anything. Just be that person.
Kindness goes a long ways.
Ugh, I am so ridiculous. I have cards. I am that girl.
I love it. Love it. Handwritten notes. I love it. Bridget?
Mhm.
I'd say, like I've been saying this whole time, smiling and being genuinely interested in somebody. You make an impression, and we all have people in our lives, right, where we can say like, man, that just stuck with me, the way that they were genuine. And I suspect Lynn is one of those people. You've made that impression on people when you go up and you genuinely want to help and you're interested in them and their existence and their experience in the moment. And finding that motivation, because it's really fun to connect with another person when you're genuine about it. We can all go about it, in a robotic way because we need to, acknowledge and do this and that and check the boxes and whatever. But it actually is more fun, when you find the genuine interest in it. And it's just fascinating to learn about all the different people, and they will open up and you get to know what they need and what's going to help them do their best and what motivates them. And it's really, it turns into a win-win, and it just feels good. It's a little sappy, but yeah. I tell people tell me all the time here, like, that's my superpower. I can say something really, really direct and nasty. As long as I have a smile on my face, people are a lot more responsive. And I believe that. I mean, I respond more to people that way as well. So that would be my advice.
Genuine. And we all have that teacher that we think of when you say that too, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And they stick in your head forever because of that and what they were able to do for us our whole life, and they stick with us forever. So I ran into one
because
of
they
mine
cared. Yeah.
30 years later, and he still came up to me and gave me a big bear hug. And it's like, sticks with me forever. So yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
I love it. Brittany?
I think just a good takeaway is that remind your team that we're all on the same team. We can all learn from each other. I think, right off the bat, maybe the older generation thinks that they're not going to learn anything from the younger, and it ends up kind of flip-flopping where they help each other with different tasks that, someone's better at than the other. So that's always fun to see. I did have someone ask me a question in the chat about keeping fairness between the office and the field. I think for us, it's kind of the same thing where you say, hey, we're all here for the same thing. And I don't know anything about electrical or HVAC or plumbing work. I'm a people manager. You know about that. Let me do this, and then we can work together. So this morning was a good example of that. We had a meeting, and we have an ongoing joke that irregardless is not a word, right? And so before the manager was going to say it, he goes, well, I'm not going to say it because Brittany will yell at me. And I said, I don't know anything that you're talking about right now in this meeting. That's why we're in different roles, but we come together and work well together. So I don't know. I think a good takeaway is just remember that you're all on the same team.
Right? No I in team, right? So yeah, we all need it. So I love that. Great feedback. And we always tease at work too about all of our acronyms and words, and nobody knows what they all mean, right? But somebody needs it, and somebody owns it, and as we all figure out our jobs. But perfect. And Brick, what would you add?
Yeah, I really love what Brittany said about, like, we're one team and we're all going towards the same goal. I think just being open-minded and meeting people where they're at, no matter if it's a customer or if it's an employee, we're all human beings. We all come from different places in our life, experience different things, and we have to just, I think, like, you've never walked in that person's shoes before. You don't know what someone's going through, and just being kind, like Lynn said, and meeting them where they're at is just so important, because you're right, kindness gets you a long way. So kind of what everyone said, going last is always hard. I don't get the big explosive, like, here's the best thing. So yeah, what everyone said is great. I agree.
And it's true. You never know what's going on in that person's personal life. You never understand what they're going through, and just being kind and generous, and treating them like they're your best friend, even though they might not be. So,
They could
great
become your best friend,
conversation,
though.
Mhm.
right? Exactly. And we spend more time with these people than our families. So keeping that in mind as well. So thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Would love to talk to you guys more. We will record, or have recorded, everything. We'll get all the notes and information out to everybody very shortly. Becky did a phenomenal job putting this together. Truly appreciate it. One of our largest groups yet this year. Again, kudos, Becky. And thank you for joining. We really, truly appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, all of you. Appreciate it.